Welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining us in today's webinar. My name is Sonia Trivedi, Communications Manager and Podcast host here at Moodle, and I'm delighted to be hosting this interesting topic today. We are going to talk about immersive learning. One thing before I move on with introductions, I would like to request you to stay active here. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. I will make sure to moderate that for Mike, and after the presentation, we'll be happy to cover all of your questions. So please feel free, don't hesitate to ask any questions that you might have on the topic. And I'm sure that most of you already know about Moodle, but those who are new, I would like to just share a few sentences. Moodle is the world's most customizable learning management solution with more than 350 million users all around the world. This topic today is very dear to us as we realize how important it is for learners to actively participate and engage in the courses they're taking in e-learning environment. Realizing that Moodle already provides standard features that encourage collaboration and use of imagination, such as groups, assignments, workshops, wikis. In addition to that, we, of course, leverage gamification, which is one of the top e-learning trends for 2023, and it is here to stay. Some of the things that we already have are earning points for completion of courses, badges, etc., etc. But being very, very flexible platform, we rely on our partners to provide these add-on features, which will truly engage and bring the learning experience even further. This is where our certified integration partner, Nearlife, come into place. Their interactive video and VR authoring platform is designed to allow educators and learning professionals to create and share immersive content quickly and easily. And today I have with me Mike Todd, founder and CEO of Nearlife, who has extensive experience in media and technology. In addition to his involvement with software, Mike has worked in film and television, creating award-winning documentaries for the likes of ESPN, PBS, and BBC. He has previously spoken about the potential of immersive learning at the UN World Humanitarian Summit, and his work with Nearlife has been recognized for excellence in learning design at the Learning and Technology Awards. Well, as you see the topic on the screen, Mike will talk about how to increase engagement and immersive learning with Moodle. Mike, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Sonia, and thanks for being part of this session with us. And welcome to everyone who's joined. Hopefully, you'll find it interesting. You can see the title there. Hopefully, again, self-explanatory. But what I was going to talk about today is really the topic of immersive learning, to understand a little more about what it is, the use cases, you know, when it's relevant, how you can use it, and also some practical advice, some hints and tips, and some very specific kind of details on how you actually can share your immersive learning in the Moodle platform. So I'm actually joined by my colleague Jaceth as well, who will demonstrate some elements. So thanks, Jaceth, also for joining. And I'll just kind of dive in really, because this is something that we're kind of passionate about here at Nearlife. We were really set up to make immersive learning and immersive content easier for people to access. And our partnership with Moodle is very much part of that. If you're not familiar with the topic, people often still do ask, what is immersive learning? And we like to look at it in the broadest sense. If you look at the kind of the academic literature in this, and there has been quite a lot of research to look at why it works, when is it effective, and all the rest. And in a lot of the research focuses on immersive learners having three core areas. One is system immersion. And what is meant by system immersion really is, I suppose, the more technical concept of what immersion is. So It could be the actual use of media, so using VR or XR content and the means by which you access that. So that's kind of like the media is the message stuff. The media you're using is the immersive experience. You've got narrative immersion, a much broader sense of what immersive is, and could be likened to being immersed in a good book or a story. So it's that idea that you want your learners or your end users to be immersed in the content, whether that's through the technical approach you're using, so take something like VR or even interactive video, or the narrative-based stuff, which is, again, more immersive than simply just going through a quiz or reading dry factual information. And then to tie in with what Sonia was saying around gamification, there is challenge-based immersion, which you can actually even combine all these three together, which is something that we advocate for as well, but you can look at all three independently. But challenge-based immersion is something that you could equate to gamification, where you're immersed in a task because it's challenging. You've got to make choices, decisions, you've got to interact, you've got to engage, and you've got to try and achieve things. So those are really the three broad pillars of what is meant by immersive learning. And you can see there's overlap, but they're quite distinct as well. So the question is, and maybe some people joining the webinar will have this question, does immersive learning work? Well, the short answer is yes. So we've not got a great deal of time today to go through all the literature that explains why it does, but it definitely does, and the research is there to prove it. And it's really an established kind of an extension of established theory that exists already in learning. We know that for certain topics and certain subjects, experiential learning works. The idea of learning by doing. We know that gamification works, and really immersive learning, as it's come to be understood today, is an evolution of those type of concepts. We know that enhanced engagement and interactions allows for the capacity to have better evaluation. So by placing people in a more immersive context where they've got to interact, make choices, decisions, or however you structure it, you know that there's scope for better evaluation. And like I say, it's all supported by research that shows that isn't actually just more engaging and entertaining often for the learners involved. They enjoy it more, but actually the retention, the knowledge retention is much, much higher. I mean, there was actually a recent report last year by the media regulator in the UK was researching this topic. And it was actually said that, I mean, the research that they covered said that you can actually increase knowledge retention by as much as 90%. And we know there's a problem in learning, those involved in this space, with the forgetting curve. So it is very valuable in that sense. It's more engaging and it works better. So it also offers other things, other added value, that you can learn in a safe, realistic, controlled way, that you can go through a process again. It's like offers that safe failure, but still can be realistic. And again, don't want to dive too much into the academics here, but just to underline what I was saying on the previous slide, that it is grounded this in existing theory and practice. And some will be, I'm sure, familiar with the concepts behind Kolb's learning cycle, but it's this idea basically of, you know, if you do something, you remember it better than if it's just taught to you. So this doing and having an experience allows you to reflect more and conclude and learn from it, and allow to just gives you more ability to implement it in your day-to-day practice. Again, same idea, gamification. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. This is Yu-Kai Chow's research. He's kind of a lead based in California around this idea of what gamification can do, not just in learning, but in spaces like advertising and marketing. But you can see all of these can be applied in learning and offer that ability to bring about immersion. So the idea, you can have a narrative, you can play a role as a protagonist. I mean, you've got here like kind of a hero. You can have scarcity, where you've got to maybe find objects or solve tasks. You can bring in these bits, unpredictability, a time pressure. Is really kind of condensing the core drivers that underline why things are a game and what appeals to us as humans in terms of playing games, and how we can kind of condense this and apply it to our learning. So I think it's relevant. It's, you know, gamification you could look at as a topic on its own, but we like to consider gamification under the broadest umbrella of immersive learning, because it really deals with that challenge-based immersion and can be the narrative-based immersion too. So what are some use cases? Well, actually many and varied. And this is really just a few that we've noticed from our users, people who kind of really push the boundaries in this space. It's probably obvious to think, but emergency response, anywhere where there's kind of dramatic decision-based learning required. What would you do in a situation when you're under pressure, when you've got to make a decision quickly? Emergency response training or security-based training, that often fits the bill very, very neatly. So that's really a space we've seen a lot of adoption with immersive learning, but it can be used for soft skills as well, more in the corporate space, because you can look at things, what's it like to experience a difficult conversation, or you're managing poor performance, or you've got to look at, dealing with difficult customers, or even sales training. All these type of things can be played through an immersive approach and make the learning more engaging, more effective. Another one, healthcare. We've seen a lot of adoption, especially around simulations and nursing simulations, how you deal with a patient, make choices, diagnose them, go through the steps. And I think even Moodle did a case study on one university that is a Moodle user and a near life user about the nursing simulations they've created. We often say, if you're thinking about it, where is situational decision making important? Where do you want to place someone in a position where they've got to make choices and make a decision in that situation? And that is often a very nice shorthand to consider where immersive learning works. And simulations, real life simulations with actors or just your fellow colleagues, where are simulations well established? Again, pretty easy to translate those into the immersive learning space and use a tool like ours or another tool, whatever you're using to create your content, you can adapt it. You can adapt the learning pretty easily into this immersive experience. Very top level list, but this, because we've really come from a learning design background, and Giuseppe, who's on the call, is our kind of content expert. But we've got really a kind of a set process how we approach things when we've worked on kind of a consultancy basis with people to help design these projects, especially in the early days before our software has evolved to where it is now. We were very hands-on in supporting people with the adoption of this. And this would be one example of how we would go about things. Start with, well, of course, the learning objectives to understand what you're trying to achieve. And then we would always begin with this, what we call a story workshop, where you can say, okay, how do you translate these learning objectives into a real world situation that you are going to have your learners face here? What's realistic? What might choices be presented with? How will the narrative unfold? So this is really linked to that kind of narrative gamification approach. But from that, traditionally, we would create this thing we call a story document, which is really the narrative, the breakdown, the map, the source that you're going to build your game on. And then you can build your game diagram. So in our platform, I mean, you do that actually in the tool, because you can build a branching diagram very quickly and map it out, what the choices represent, how you're going to make the choices, and you can then go into more detail on the script. And if you're using something like actors, you can film them. Maybe you've got just presenter-led stuff. You've got AI tools like Synthesia and others, I think Coliseum, or where you can create videos, or animation tools like Beyond. All those type of video creation tools can be used in this process. Or you can use the traditional approach and film them, or even create slides and just have choices, images, use a tool like Canva, make it dynamic that way. And then you would build and share from our platform, and you could put it in your Moodle LMS. So just to dive in some practical examples, if I just show you here one that's built out. So this would be one example of I'd say a classic narrative stroke game-based immersive learning that's also VR. So it sort of ticks all the boxes. You can see the diagram. This is built in our authoring tool. It's just the intro, but this is an example that the World Health Organization used to train civilian doctors and nurses who form part of emergency medical teams. So let's say a team from South Africa or the UK or Canada or Argentina, wherever it might be. If you are going out as an emergency medical team under the WHO umbrella, you kind of get accreditation. And one of the key bits of that is awareness that you may be going into, let's say, a complex civil situation. It may be a post-conflict area, or maybe there's civil unrest. So it's there's a UN document that WHO have called the Blue Book, which has guidelines on how to behave, tips and advice. And this effect of this project translated that into an immersive experience where it's almost like a choose your own adventure style journey where you go on mission, you arrive at the airport, and you can see here it's built out. So you've got kind of decision-based options, of what you're going to do here, and then you would make those choices, and the outcome would be based on the the choices you've made. And you've got this is VR, so you can have your VR videos just drag and dropped in here. But you could then share, and we'll go into more detail on this, using LTI integration, which many will be familiar with. You can just embed this in your Moodle platform. We'll go into that in a bit more detail, but you can see here, if I just play through the case study. So in this option, if I was to launch into VR mode, it'd go full screen. So I can play it on my laptop, which I'm doing now, but also you could actually even go have someone access the web through a Quest headset or another headset, or even Apple that's coming online next year, a bit more expensive. But you could use a smartphone, but you can launch from your LMS from Moodle, and you would start this, and you can play through the experience. So even if someone's not got if they've not got the VR headset, you can still play it on your laptop and you drag it around. And you can see here, I've got these decision-based options, so I make a choice, and then the story's unfolding accordingly. So it's really presenting you with choices, and you're fully immersed in the situation, like you're a character in the story. So it ticks a lot of the boxes of what we've talked about in terms of it's using actually the technical immersion, it's using the narrative-based stuff because it's a story you're part of, but it's also game-based and interacting, making choices. So this is just one example where the kind of boundaries have been pushed a little bit in terms of bringing this training, making it more accessible, because a lot of international responders, they will do simulations, but they get people in one place, they use actors, can be very expensive, difficult for everyone to access. So this makes it a scalable experience. Another example I wanted to just show, which is much more kind of down the gamification route. This is one that's around cybersecurity, but in this case, if I'll just show you here, it uses it's using Beyond in this case, and so they're using kind of the Beyond's gamification templates, and it's using kind of quiz-based choices, but it's kind of again got the narrative element of the story. It's like you've got to get back to Earth, you've got to solve the kind of the cyberspace challenges. So it's and it's using 2D, just to highlight, it doesn't have to be VR, it can still be immersive using standard video, and as I say, even slides. So in this case, where it's built out with Beyond videos, you can you kind of got a little story where you're an adventurer. I can just start here. So it's using hotspot areas on the screen to make them interactive. So I can make these. We need to perform a pen test. So this is just again a creative way. It's a cybersecurity company who did this, who do a lot of training with international organizations, and it's like grounded in some of the core principles of cybersecurity. But we thought this was an interesting case study that they shared with us, allowed us to kind of use in this demo. So again, built out similar, and you can have, it doesn't just have to be that you kind of got choices leading to outcomes. For example, in our tool, if I look at this hotspot that's been created, there's feedback added in, but I can also add achievements and set conditions. So you can have these kind of game-based features that allow you to set rules, and maybe you've got to go through 3 areas. Maybe you're looking for the lamp, and then only if you find the lamp in one scene can you get to the dark room later. So it's kind of game-based metaphors, but you get the idea that you could apply these things in a learning environment. So if I just pick back up, we've seen the cyberspace example, and then you've got an ability to track those choices. I mean, our tool will track them. Some of this information you can extract in other ways, but it just underlines that idea that I talked about at the beginning, that you've got the ability to have more complex tracking of choices decisions, that gives you richer data on how people perform. We know that the likes of XAPI and other things that have been looking at this for a number of years, how you can get richer data from these type of more complex simulation scenarios. So the practical stuff, we talked to conceptual stuff, showed you some examples of how immersive learning can be designed in our tool, for example, some case studies, how it's used. So in practical terms, as Sonia explained, we're a Moodle certified integration partner. So in this case, you could very easily build immersive learning in our platform and share it in Moodle, and Giuseppe will show that in a moment. And you can integrate, there's kind of three ways. The LTI is the standard which is used not just by Moodle, but a number of especially education-focused LMSs. But it really is a well-established principle that will create a kind of a secure link between our platform and Moodle and anyone else who uses LTI. But that's the core of our certified integration relationship. But you can even download it as a SCORM file and upload. That's going to limit the size, of course, because of the video and the normally the relatively small zip files you can upload within a learning management system. Or you can the advantage with LTI is the embed, and then you could even integrate if you did have a learner record store. That is an option if you were interested in XAPI, and that's an area, if people are looking at that, we're keen to explore more about how people are using that for simulations and how they're going to adapt the richer data, because a lot of people actually talk about XAPI, but the real world use cases with clear outcomes, they're more rare, and so we always like to hear those and speak to people about them. Did you want to just show the practical way that happens, Giuseppe, in terms of how LTI works, how you would share your scenario in Moodle?
Yeah, I think you need to allow me to share my screen.
Oh, sorry, I should have done that at the beginning.
So just using Mike's cybersecurity example, I'm going to show you how we put it into our Moodle course. And I've got it there already, and it looks like this inside of your course. And you can just play it directly in there. In his demo. So I'll just stop that. So it's playing in the background, but I'll show you how to add it into your Moodle course. So all you need to do is add an activity or resource, and then select the external tool, just like SCORM. Oh, no, sorry, external tool. And then you give your activity a name. And then click the show more. You can add a description and then tick these settings, which you'll be familiar with. And then these three things, the secure tool URL, the launch, you determine the launch, the consumer key, and the shared secret you get from Near Life. So when you're in Near Life and you're in your projects area, you select the bit of learning that you want to embed into Moodle. So I'll just use the same example, Lost in Cyberspace, but you get from your project, select edit, and you get these things, the key. So you just copy and paste the key there, the secret, and you would just type these in and set them yourself. Just copy them in. And then you need the URL, and you need to select this one, the LTI launch URL. Again, just copy and paste it into Moodle. Those are the three things that you really need apart from the activity name. And then you can just save and display. And there you go. Super easy. The benefits of using the LTI is that any changes that you make in your life, you don't have to go back into Moodle and update it because it's that live connection. So anything you do here automatically updates in Moodle. If you use SCORM, you've got to download your SCORM zip, upload your SCORM zip, and republish. But you do away with that when you use LTI. So it's one of the reasons why I love using it, because it sort of eliminates an extra step for me. And then in terms of how you edit, how it displays, all of those things are in Moodle, and they're really easy to change. And that is basically it. That is how you integrate a near life interactive scenario into Moodle. And it works with VR as well. So you don't have to export any like packages or learning packages. It's not complicated at all. It's super easy. It took less than a minute, I think, to show you how to do that. So we love it for that very reason. That's it, Mike.
Perfect. Thanks, Gisette. So that's really it. Just to summarize, I mean, you've seen kind of some examples there of, you know, immersive learning, some ideas around why it works and some other use cases. I think if we to try and summarize some key considerations, if you're thinking about adopting immersive learning as an approach, obviously the clarity of outcomes. You know, I talked about the story workshop that we do as an approach when we consult in on these type of things, and it's really, you want to be able to map the interactivity or the immersive project to the outcomes, so to your learning objectives. So it's very, very much grounded in what you're trying to do. Maybe stating the obvious there, but you know, just worth reiterating. And then, you know, you've got the opportunity to capture rich data. You've got pass fail, yes, has someone completed it, but maybe you're going to have scoring, maybe something more complex around the achievements and conditions, some kind of game-based activity. So understanding how you'll measure success, build that into the design. And then again, try to show a couple of examples that are at the different ends of the spectrum. You know, cut your cloth to suit, as the saying goes. What can you realistically create? Is it going to be just videos created with a tool like Beyond or Synthesia, or using even Canva with stock footage or slides or PowerPoint? You can use all these things to create immersive projects. It's just, you know, how much time have you got? How much budget do you have? And at the further end of the spectrum, it could be like, you know, using actors like the WHO one does with full VR projects where it's immersed. So and you can have multiple projects once you adopt the approach and you're doing it regularly. You know, you could have ones at all ends of the spectrum. And the technical approach, I mean, we're showing you how our tool works, obviously, because that's what we use, and that's kind of in this case, you know, we've got the relationship with Moodle, we're a partner, but you know, you can always think these things through and get the right approach for you. And we talked about integration, how it will be shared, and again, if you're a Moodle user, there's obviously the straightforward way, which we've shown, but there are other ways. But it's worth understanding the end result from the outset. Right, we ran over a couple of minutes, but I hope we've still got time for some questions. If we hand back to you, Sonia.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mike and Gisette, for this interesting presentation. I really enjoyed it and learned a little bit more about immersive learning today. I don't see any questions in the chat as of now, but I would like to start with some things that I can ask you as a starting point, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. You mentioned a little bit more about the use cases, right? But I was curious to know a little bit more in depth, what are the most popular use cases and what do you think works well? Maybe if you can pick one or two, just give us a bit more examples and so on.
Yeah. So I mean, I mentioned it briefly earlier, but certainly I think healthcare is a very strong use case because there's such a well-established adoption in that space of simulations. So, you know, patient simulations, how you would assign medicine, how you would make choices of what kind of prioritizing treatment. There's a lot of established kind of scenarios in the healthcare space, even with kind of pharma companies in the broader space about how drugs should be kind of assigned to a patient, you know, what you need to check for, questions you need to ask. So that is a very, very popular and prominent use case. And I think it's because the adoption of these simulations is so mature in the healthcare space. But I would then say, I think the kind of role play situations that you get a lot around sales training and around customer support are also very popular because let's take, you know, the kind of scenarios we're looking at earlier with the narrative-based decision making. You can imagine, and we've certainly seen these options where you're presented with a customer, you've got to make a choice, and it's dynamic. It unfolds. It unfolds as you kind of like make the choice, and you're seeing that direct impact of the decision making. So I'd say those are two of the very popular areas, but there are so many, and we started to see somewhat more complex simulations being developed by people who use our platform around things like, entrepreneurship scenarios, like the business schools develop, where you kind of go through this whole process of setting up and developing a business. So you can get quite rich and complex simulations where the outcomes are more varied than just simply choice leading to outcomes. So it all depends, of course, on your needs. But I do think the most topics with a bit of thought can be adapted across to a more immersive form of learning.
Right. That sounds very interesting. And I'm sure that some of our audience might be thinking also that there should be a barrier to adoption around creating this type of content. So do you think this is the case, or do you believe now it's more accessible? What is really that we're looking for?
Well, I think if you're already a Moodle user, you've obviously got the infrastructure in place to, manage your learners. You've got kind of the framework there, and then the next step is really how you can provide a more, if you're interested in doing so, how you can provide a more immersive experience. Well, take our tool, for example. Obviously, you can very simply, as just said, illustrated, embed it within Moodle, and you can do it again with I know this is our webinar to explain kind of some of the concepts, but however you do it, if you've got your Moodle in place already, if you can integrate, then that lowers the barrier. So as Josette showed, in the case of our interactive scenarios or immersive scenarios, you can integrate them very easily. So that's not a problem. But then perhaps people may think conceptually it's difficult, how am I going to go about this? But again, if you're clear on the learning objectives, you can, and near life would allow you to do this as well, but you can storyboard quite easily, and you can build out your diagrams quickly, and it allows you to visually play through it. And you can even use slides before you create any media to make it interactive and to engage stakeholders. So that's pretty easy. The actual building out, like in our platform, would take minutes. That's not difficult. I'd say that the barrier that people come up across most is what media I'm going to use. Have I got to film this, or am I going to become an expert? And not really. Again, maybe there are cases. We see it more in emergency response space in healthcare, where people do want it realistic with film, perhaps with actors or at least volunteers. But I think, with a tool like Beyond, or a tool like Canva, or another tool like even PowerPoint, where you're just creating your slides, you can still add that game-based element, which allows you a form of immersive experience without having to invest a lot. So I do think the barrier is low, and it's only more complex should you wish it to be. And once you get the hang of it, I think it's that a conceptualization of how you are going to take the learning object and move it to this space. But but we're always happy to answer questions, even if people just wanted to get in touch for that advice. We can always point. We've been doing this stuff for years, so maybe we think this way, but I guess it's new for some people.
Yeah.
Question.
Absolutely, it does very much. And in the meantime, we have another question from our audience. So Daddy is asking, so first of all, I'll read the whole question for you, Mike. This is a quite interesting app for immersive learning. One question about subscription is that after we create the content in real life, will our students be able to access it even after our subscription ended?
So it can be. We offer, it's slightly longer answer than for this webinar, but the basics are it can be. We have kind of with our tools the ability to have, like, if you've got an enterprise account where you're making, a lot of this content, especially if you're maybe an educational institution or whatever, you can download a kind of a zip file that's SCORM compatible that you could upload into Moodle. So that's another way that you can share the content other than just the LTI. Problem is with that, there are file limitations with what you can, the size. If it's like a lot of VR, a lot of video, there are limitations. But if it was a slide based or small video files or a shorter simulation, that's no problem. Otherwise, if you are using LTI integration, if it's effectively playing from our platform, the video hosting, and it's streamed from that, then in that case, you would need the subscription and able to be able to access it and all the rest of it. But so there is, again, without going into too much detail, it's a yes, but depends on the situation.
Okay, so we hope that we answered your question, Teddy. Please tell us in the chat if you have any clarification or if that's okay with you. Yeah, okay. While the other people were asking for questions, I have one more quick one. Maybe everyone is wondering here if you can give some tips around building immersive experience. I know you provided some considerations, but if you can give our audience here 3 key tips, for example, what would that be?
Yeah, sure. If I just, for example, bear with me here, I'm going to I just go to create a new project here. So I'm just going to save this. So very basic, really basic, but there are kind of 2 ways to think about it. If you're looking for the more narrative game-based stuff, your simple branching approach is a good place to start. So, I'm just dragging and dropping here the nodes to create a diagram. Then I can create, for example, the links. So I could say, what am I going to say here? Choose. Yes, I'm not going into the technical details. I'm just going to connect it here to one of the nodes. Very simple. I can choose on the diagram. And so I can build this out. And that's a simple way to think about it. You could build out your diagram. I'm like, okay, how many choices am I going to have? 5, 6, 7, just set a number, and how many outcomes. And do you want continued pathways, or you want everyone to be kind of pushed back on the same pathway? So that's one way to get started. Narrative, decision-based, stroke game-based scenarios, choices, outcomes, very simple. Or very popular with VR, like maybe with topics like onboarding and all the rest as an immersive experience. It's more than a narrative experience. It's like an exploring experience. So you're going here, I'm creating a map that's more about, let's say it was a museum tour. This is the central lobby. Maybe this is the natural history area. Maybe this is the Egyptology section. Wherever you want to go, you can navigate. And so I'd say conceptually, those are 2 distinct areas. The explorer principle, the immersive experience where you explore a topic in a way of like making choices and looking around, or the more narrative, like game-based stuff where it's kind of more linear, although branching, and you've got different outcomes. So I'd say if you're getting started, those are 2 ways to think about the experiences: the explorer experience or the narrative game-based experience. And you can, whether you use our tool or you just sketching on a bit of paper, just play around with building the diagram out. And it's once you've got that in your head and it's conceptually there, I think it's very easy to get started. And certainly very easy to build and share in Moodle and all the rest. So hopefully that's helpful, just as a small tip.
Absolutely. I think that was very helpful, at least for me. I am ready to create my own immersive experience. Thank you very much, Mike, one more time. And thank you for the presentation today. As I mentioned, we were wrapping up. We are at the end of our webinar, but please feel free to contact Mike or Gizette. The emails are already in the chat, so you can always visit NearLife's website. And yeah, Mike, any final words from you?
No, I just thanks Sonia again for taking part in the webinar, and obviously, we're obviously big fans of Moodle and the partnership we have. So, and thanks to everyone for being part of the session. And yeah, any questions or even informal chats, any ideas, we're always happy to have a conversation. And this is our area of interest, so it doesn't have to be about something very practical. We just like to talk about this topic to anyone who listens. Okay, so thanks a lot, Sonia, and thanks everyone for being part of it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.